Hey guys, what is up? David here. I'm going to be talking today all about Discover Weekly. Now, I'm sure this is going to be a very popular episode because, everybody wants to get on Discover Weekly. If you've released a track in your life, this is the playlist you want to get onto. And it's just because it's the most powerful playlist, I would say. Editorial playlists are kind of in a league of their own. You get a hell of a lot of streams from those. But this one, it's because it's the place, it's the clues in the name, Discover Weekly. It's where people discover music. How many times have you used it yourself? You've gone onto the playlist and, you clicked a random track, that looks interesting, and you listen to it. And this is where Spotify are so good at picking tracks for their users. The algorithms are fantastic. And every time I've ever listened to a track on Discover Weekly, I pretty much always like it, because it's just so much like the other tracks that I would listen to. It has that same vibe, that same sound. So, when your track gets to a certain level of popularity and it starts getting featured on Discover Weekly, hopefully, you are going to be, in theory, put to people who will be your perfect fan. They are going to love your music. So this is why everybody wants to get on to Discover Weekly. And today I'm going to go through kind of like the basics of how you can start getting yourself onto this playlist. It's not easy. It does require a lot of work, a lot of patience, but ultimately it does require a bit of luck as well. So let me dive straight in, and I'll go over very briefly for anyone who doesn't know much about Discover Weekly and just sort of explain what it is and how it works. So again, this is another algorithm, I can't speak today. This is another algorithm. I'm just going to give up. This is a playlist by Spotify, and what they do is they automatically find all of the tracks that you like and basically suggest other tracks that are similar to the ones that you listen to. So they say, oh, you like the Beatles, therefore you'll like this track. You don't really have any control over it. It's not something you can submit to. It just will happen. So in terms of how you go about getting featured on Discover Weekly, there's a lot of kind of stuff online about you need a certain amount of streams. I think the number is, they say you need 20,000 streams to then get yourself featured. And that seems to be partly true from what I can tell. I recently got featured on Discover Weekly on one of my solo projects, and this was 2 tracks. One track originally was featured. It literally just hit about 21,000, and then it got featured. So I was like, oh, well, that does kind of make sense. That seems to be when you hit that 20k, that's when you then get picked up. But the thing with this track, it had an incredibly high save rate. I mean, it was around 40%, and it had been featured on Release Radar, loads of playlists, and it still was on about 40%. It was just a track that people just seemed to love. It was very catchy and people were just saving it. It was on, like thousands of playlists, people just adding it to their own playlists, and it performed really, really well for like 4 months, 5 months. But this is the thing, that took a long time. It's not a case of you release it 3 weeks later you're on Discover Weekly. No, it takes a long while. It took me about 6 months to get to that point, because you have to train the algorithms, and there's a certain steps that you have to take, I guess, in order to get to that point. So let me just go from the beginning. If you want to get yourself on Discover Weekly, let's say you're starting from scratch, okay? First thing you need to do, obviously, you need to release tracks. You need to release tracks regularly. People suggest every 4 to 6 weeks, and to me, I think that's spot on. If you can do that, do it. You have to do it. Just as you were to go and record an album, you need to have like 4, 5 tracks in your pocket that you can pull out, so that you're never like behind, because the last thing you want to be doing is rushing to release a song like every 6 weeks. Just before you do anything, work out a plan, work out which songs you want to release, write them, record them, whatever you need to do, have them ready, and then plan a release schedule for every 6 weeks and get them out there. And you need to keep that up. You need to just keep releasing. Now, to begin with, it'll take some time, but you have to just keep releasing, keep building it up. You'll notice that after a little while, you'll get something pop up on your profile, which is the people also listen to section. Now, that's really key. Because what that does is it's similar to Discover Weekly in the sense that it can tell what other users, what other bands they like. So if I listen to your track and I also listen to, I don't know, let's say Black Sabbath, and I listen to your music and Black Sabbath, on your profile, Black Sabbath would appear under that section if enough people listened. You know what I mean? If everyone who listens to your music listens to Black Sabbath, then in all likelihood they would appear under that section of people also listen to. But in order to do that, Spotify has to have enough data about your profile and about your songs, and that just takes time. So I think on their website they sort of say that they take everything, all the data from the streams, from social media, articles and blogs that have been written about you. So it really is everything, which is why it takes a long time. The other thing they do as well is, let's say you're featured on 100 playlists, they will look and analyze who is above you and who is below you on these playlists, and then use that to kind of work out similar artists. So if every 10 playlists, you've got a Black Sabbath song above you and, I don't know, another song below you, and people are listening to that and they can see that you're in that particular order, they use that information to work out what bands or artists are similar to you. So that is really key. That people also listen to section, that won't appear straight away. That will take a little bit of time to appear, and you need to have a good amount of data available for Spotify to be able to generate that. So that seems to be the first step. Once that happens, you'll then find that you go on to something called Spotify Radio. And what that is, again, it's similar. You will have your own radio, your own artist radio. It will contain your songs and other songs of similar artists. Normally, it will be artists that are in that people also listen to section. But the cool thing is, you will then appear in other artists' radios as well. So you can pick up a lot of streams. I mean, you can pick up easily, sort of to begin with, 40, 50, 60 streams a day, but that does grow up very quickly. Suddenly you'll be on 100, 150, 200 radio streams per day in some cases, if you've got a lot of music and you're building up very fast. So that is key. So that tends to be the second thing that happens. Then some time will pass. You've got your people who also listen to. You've got your Spotify radio. Spotify will continue to get data, and then time will pass, and then suddenly, bang, you go on. That seems to be what happens in my experience. So, as I said at the start, it's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. But once you do start to trigger that Discover Weekly algorithm, it becomes easier. So let's just talk about briefly what happens then. So let's say you've got a track that has been doing well. Maybe you've got 25,000, maybe 30,000 streams, seems to be a good number. You've got a good save rate. People have added it to their playlists. Your stats are really good. You're on Discover Weekly. Brilliant. Normally what will happen though is you'll get just a few streams. I mean 20 streams in a week. It won't be a lot if you're just starting out. And the reason for this is, again, it's all testing. So Spotify will put that out to a few select people, and based on the way they interact with that song will depend on whether your playlist, whether your song stays on the playlist or whether it drops off. Now, if say 20 people listen, but nobody likes the song, they all skip it within 20 seconds, well, the chances are you're not going to stay on Discover Weekly. But if people are adding it to their playlist, they're saving the song, the retention rate is high, then Spotify will know that, yes, this is a good song, people like it, so they will put it out to more people. And you'll find that next week, suddenly you've got 50 streams in a week. Then 2 weeks later, they take more data and they put it out to more and more people. And then you've got like 300 streams in a week. So that seems to be the way that it works. It will start slowly. And if it performs well, you'll get put out to more and more and more people. But also, as I mentioned at the beginning, there is an element of luck. You might find that you have a song that hits 30,000 streams, has great stats, but it doesn't get picked up. And then you think this random song comes on and it hits Discover Weekly, and you're like, well, how did that happen? And that's what happened to me. The first song that came onto Discover Weekly, it was my worst song. In my opinion, it was like my least favorite one, but the stats were probably the best, and it was the one that people seemed to like. So it got selected. Now, I only got about 100 streams for that track. It was only on for about 2 weeks, and then it dropped off, and another track came on, and that one performed really well, and that ended up, well, it's still on. It's been on for quite a few, nearly a few months now, and it's got literally thousands and thousands and thousands of streams just in a short period of time, because it performed well. It started off slow, and then for whatever reason, it just ticks the right box. So it is a bit of guesswork. It's a bit of a fine art, but ultimately, the analogy I would use is, imagine you have a machine gun and you're firing out freaking, 5,000 bullets. Eventually, if you keep firing that gun, you're going to hit your target. And I think this is sort of a lesson to take away from this, is you need to have patience with Spotify. It takes time. I know there's people out there that make it look really easy, but you know what? They've only got to the point they're at by A, patience, B, lots of testing, and time, or C, putting a hell of a lot of money into Facebook ads. That seems to be, there's no shortcut to success unless you're sort of buying your way in. But even then, your track has to be good. There's no point spending £10,000 on Facebook ads if your track sucks, because it doesn't matter how many people you put it out to. If it's bad, they're not going to like it, and Spotify won't perform well. It's just as simple as that. So you need to focus on producing sort of the best music that you can, and creating the best product that you can, and B, making sure that your targeting is absolutely on point, so that when you do run some ads, you need to be putting that out to the right people, so that when that person listens to your song, they're loving it. They're absolutely loving it. So that's what it comes down to. You need to have a rock solid plan, and this is what I'm going to try and help you with throughout all of these podcast episodes, building up that plan. But as I say, today it's just an overview and just to sort of give you a little bit of insight, but ultimately I want to give you a bit of reassurance, because there'll be people out there who probably are banging their head against the wall going, why can't I get my tracks on Discover Weekly? Why I'm putting good music out, but nobody's listening to it? Well, it comes down to this. You need to have patience, and you need to be doing the right things. So if you release 2 tracks and you give up, well, then that's on you. You need to be getting your head down and plowing on every month, every 6 weeks, like new song, relentless, like high quality tracks, promotion, testing ads, making sure that you have great ad copy, you have attractive videos when people go on Facebook and they scroll down to something that catches their attention. And ultimately, you just need to give them a reason to want to listen to your music. But if you were out there and you just stumped, don't give up. I mean, it took me a long time. I mean, it took me a year to figure this out. It took me a year to devise the perfect strategy, because before my first solo project that I did, I will admit, I pretty much failed. I was running so many ads, and for whatever reason, it just wasn't working. It was not working. I don't know why. I mean, there's lots of different reasons why that could have been, But I think ultimately the strategy I had, the ad strategy, just wasn't quite there. I was still learning how to really use Facebook ads properly. I was still learning about Spotify itself, and I felt like it was an impossible task. But eventually, once I worked out that strategy and I had it in place, after sort of 5-6 months, I got there. So this is the thing. If you've released, I'd say if you release kind of 6 tracks in 6 months, 6 or 7 months, and you're still struggling, you're still not seeing results, you're not getting listeners, you're not getting on release radar, you're not quite there, then you need to kind of take a step back and look at maybe the tracks that you're releasing, look at the targeting, look at your genre, look at it all and go, well, is it me? Is it the tracks? But I think until that point comes, if you've released 1 or 2 songs, you can't expect to just magically get onto to Discover Weekly with thousands of streams. It's just very unlikely to happen. The only time I think that is the case is if you're already established and you have a strong fan base. So let's say you've been in a band for 5-6 years, you have thousands and thousands of fans, they're ready to listen to your music. Well, that's a bit different. You have a fan base there. Likewise, if you've been signed to a record deal, they have things in place to get you there straight away. Do you know what I mean? You release tracks and you see these bands, they sign to a label, and they release their first 2 tracks. They're on editorial playlists, they're on Discover Weekly. But you know what? That's just the way it is. They have like systems in place and things built up to be able to do that. But if you're starting from scratch, you need to just cut yourself some slack and take one step at a time, which is why I sort of try to lay it out in steps. So the first step, if you just started out, is build up that base. Set yourself a target of 500 followers. Set yourself a target of getting on 5 blogs in the next 2 months. Then you say, right, month 3, I want to try and have Spotify radio and the people who also listen to, I want that. I want to be able to give Spotify enough data to be able to give me those things on my profile, and build it up slowly. But just remember that it's always a process, and a long process at that. So don't be disheartened, because if you keep doing the right things, and you will get there eventually, it just takes time. So so that's going to be pretty much it for today. It's just a very quick look into Discover Weekly. I'm definitely going to go into a lot more detail. I'm going to try and give you some more examples, try and give you some more details on each kind of individual stage. Next time we'll look at what Spotify says and have, because a lot of the time you get these guides from Spotify and say this is what you must do to get featured on these playlists, and a lot of the time they aren't that useful, but there are some kind of good hints in there as well. And we kind of look at the classic mistakes that you might make when trying to get on these kind of algorithmic playlists as well. But hopefully today this is kind of just giving you a little bit of an insight into how you can go about getting onto Discover Weekly, and it's almost a bit of a coaching type thing as well, just saying like a motivational, don't lose hope thing too, because I was in that same position. I sort of lost that hope that I was ever going to get featured on Discover Weekly. So I know your pain, and unfortunately it's kind of out of your hands in a way, because it does come down to, as I mentioned, things that are out of your control, and it comes down to a bit of luck. All you can focus on is putting that product out there and it being the best product possible. So let's bring it to a close for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't checked out our previous episode all about release radar, then please check that out now. Next time I'm going to go in a bit of a deeper dive into Discover Weekly again, but also I'm going to be talking about Spotify editorial playlists, because I know that's another thing that people are very keen to get onto. I'll be warned, it's very, very, very difficult to do. Again, you're going to need a lot of luck, but you know what, we'll dive into that next time. I'll give you the lowdown and tell you exactly what you need to be doing to give yourself the best chance of success. Until then, take care and speak soon. Bye.